for joining us today. This is part of the Tax Learning series for 2026, brought to you by Legal Services of Northern Virginia, specifically the Low Income Taxpayer Clinic. My name is Valechka Watkins, and I'm here to tell you a little bit about COVID-19 related refunds and abatements. And this might be a surprise to you, because we all think of the pandemic as being over, as it is. But there have been some exciting developments that might entitle you to some refunds or abatements from the IRS. First, let's talk about refunds and abatements, right? When you have overpaid your federal taxes or paid penalties and interest that you actually didn't owe, you are entitled to a refund, to a return of the monies you gave. An abatement is similar, except that in that case, you have been assessed certain monies that the IRS alleges you have to pay, but turns out that you don't have to, and then they can be abated, which is another way of saying that they will be eliminated from your account as not owed. Now, if the IRS does not automatically issue you a refund when you're entitled to one, you have to make a claim. If you don't, you lose the right to receive those monies. There are some usual deadlines applicable to these actions. First, there is a 3-year deadline from either the date when the return was due or the date when you actually filed the tax return. Let's think about this. Generally, for federal purposes, that date when due is April 15th. So it would be 3 years from that date. There have been years when there have been changes, but generally we all recognize that. There's also a second deadline, which is 2 years from the date you paid. There are cases when individuals timely file their return, but then they realize they don't have the full amount owed and they cannot immediately pay. So they wait and pay at a later date. If that happens, then you can use that date as the 2 years from the date you paid. Again, whether it's 3 or 2, if you don't abide by those deadlines, you lose the ability to get your money back. So here are some examples, right? 3 years from the date you filed, 3 years from the date it was due. For 2019, for example, the due date was originally April 15, 2020. Because we were living through the pandemic, the IRS extended that deadline and determined that the new deadline it wanted to impose on taxpayers was July 15, 2020. Add 3 years to that, we have July 15, 2023. Again, if you were entitled to a refund when you filed and you didn't get it, then you needed to make sure under these ideas and parameters that you claimed your return by July 15, 2023. And we have the other years as well. Taxable year 2020 would have been due in 2021, generally April 15th, but we were still living through the pandemic. The IRS extended that deadline to May 17, 2021. Add 3 years to that, it would be May 17, 2024. Look at 2021, the due date was April 18th. So you would add 3 years to that from 22 to 25. For taxable year 2022, deadline would have been April 15, 2023. 3 years to that, 2026. These years are very important because all of these deadlines happen to fall within the time that the COVID pandemic was a nationally declared federal disaster. Now, there's been some legal developments that affect whether or not those deadlines and the 3 years apply to you the way the IRS said they did. Federal courts have found an exception And they have said that if the IRS imposed upon you penalties or interest because you paid late, you filed late, you were just unable to pay during the COVID-19 pandemic, you may be entitled to a refund of any late payments, any penalties for the late payments, any interest for them. But the deadline for you to assert your claim, to enforce your rights, is July 10, 2026, right? We gave a series of other deadlines previously. The courts have decided differently. Let's see why. The COVID-19 pandemic was a federally declared disaster. Now, it took us a while to figure out we were in the middle of it, but the declaration that it was a federal disaster was made effective January 20, 2020. That was the day when the first person in the United States was diagnosed with COVID-19. This federal declaration was in effect until May 11th, 2023, a rather long time. There is a law that says that once a federal disaster is declared, all filing and payment deadlines normally applied by the IRS should have been, are automatically postponed while the declaration is in effect plus 60 days. This was the law during the pandemic. So it was the law that was applicable to all of those deadlines. The 60 additional days means that any IRS deadlines should have been postponed through July 10, 2023. And what's important here is that during all that period, from January 20, 2020, through July 10, 2023, the IRS shouldn't have counted against you. If you were imposed or you paid any penalties or interest the IRS assessed against you during that period, you may be entitled to a refund. If you didn't pay them, you may be entitled to an abatement. Now, how do we figure out if we were imposed penalties or late interests? If you don't know, you probably don't remember, you should access your IRS account transcripts for years 2020, 2023. Let me stop here. It is possible that you have letters in your files that show you, that tell you that the IRS imposed these, but I would still recommend that you access your account transcripts because they give you a full view of what happened during any given year. You can get copies of these transcripts by calling the IRS at 1-800-908-9946. Now, anybody who has called the IRS lately knows that you may be on hold for a while and you may not have an hour or two at your disposal to wait for the IRS to pick up the phone to then request your account transcripts. So you can go about it two other ways. There's a second way. You can request them online, but like the transcript you request by calling, they will probably be mailed to you. And the third way is to access your IRS profile and just download them immediately. Well, you can request them online. As I said, there's a special website that I'm showing on the screen, Get Transcript by Mail. You're going to input your information, Social Security or ITIN, your date of birth, the address that the IRS has on record for you, including your zip code. And then these will be mailed. There's always the possibility that the transcripts could get delayed in the mail, right? Maybe they're not processed as fast as we wished. So my recommendation is always when we're pressed with a deadline, like we are now on July 10, 2026, that we access our irs.gov account. How do we do this? If you already have one, you know how to do it. Just sign in through ID.me. If you don't have one, let's set one up. But let's do that from a trusted website. We don't want to fall prey to scams. You don't want to go to another website because it could have been set up to steal your identity. Or maybe it's just abusive in that it might charge you to do something that you can do for free. We would start at irs.gov/payment/online account for individuals, but you can simply do a search on your favorite search engine. You can search for IRS ID.me and make sure that you click on the link that starts with the irs.gov. To create your account, you're going to need a computer, which you either have or have access to because you're watching this presentation. You're going to input your email. You're going to choose a password unique to you. And then you're going to give that computer, the computer's camera, access to you. The IRS is going to want to see your face, to record it, and to compare it with a readily available government-issued ID. The software is going to do a biometric analysis and confirm that whoever is on that ID is the person in front of the computer. In addition, they are going to send you a message. You can receive this message on your cell phone or on a landline, and you can receive it as a text message on your cell phone or as a call on either. When they call you, it's a recording, and they're just going to dictate to you a series of numbers that are a code. When they text you, you can see that on the text message. You're going to input that on the website and create your account and securely access your account. When you do, you're going to see something like this. If you owe any amounts, it would show that. If you don't, it would show a 0. But look, it also gives you access to a few other features. If you're on a payment plan, you can make payments. If you want to view your tax records, which is what we're going to do, you can go through it, and there's other possibilities. You can either view any notices they may have sent you. You are going to go into view your tax records and specifically ask to see your transcripts. This is shown here on the right side of the screen. Once you access that, it should look something like this. I can't guarantee it will look exactly like this. Different browsers might organize documents differently, but it's going to be these 4 categories. And you are going to want to look at your account transcripts. Those are the ones that we are here seeing circled in green. As it happens, what we want to look into is the 2021 and 2020 account transcripts. So next to the circle, you are going to see that it says show more transcripts. Follow that link so you can access the transcripts. Once you do, you're going to see something similar to this. It looks like it was typed in an old school typewriter, right? It's going to give you information about your account. It's going to usually start when you filed the return. So that's going to be the first entry. It's going to show whatever withholdings were done throughout the year for you. If you filed late, then it's going to show penalty for late payment of tax, and it can show interest charged for the late payment. And this is what we need to look at. As I told you, the federal courts determined that these types of penalties and interest should not have been imposed on taxpayers from the beginning of the pandemic, January 2020, through the end of the declaration plus 60 days. So it is very important that you look and see What are the amounts that were improperly imposed on you? Download it, print it even, because you're going to have to mail them. To preserve your right to a refund or an abatement if you haven't paid, you are going to have to file a form, IRS Form 843. You're also going to include the printout of those transcripts. And you have to mail this before July 10, 2026. Where are you going to mail this? Well, you're going to fill out and mail the form along with the transcripts to the same address where you would file a paper federal return. For Virginia taxpayers, the address is Department of the Treasury, Internal Revenue Service, Kansas City, Missouri, 64999-0002. And no, I am not confused. We do have to mail our paper returns to Kansas City, Missouri. It's a regional center. If you live in a different state, you might have to mail it to a different place. But Kansas City is where we Virginians do that. My advice to anyone mailing anything to the IRS, and what I do when I mail things to the IRS is to do it through certified mail. Certified mail is going to give you, as you see, a tracking number on the side, which allows you to then access the Postal Service website or go to your post office and corroborate when it was delivered. If it was delivered to a P.O. box, it might tell you that it was picked up. But in this case, we're just sending it to the address I told you, which doesn't include a P.O. box. This is important because the IRS receives so much mail, so many tax refunds, and many other letters that it happens sometimes that things get lost or delayed for extended periods of times. But if you send in your form and have that certified mail receipt, you can prove that you enforced your rights before the deadline. This is what Form 843 is going to look like. It's not going to require a lot of writing or explanations on your part. They more or less have categories. But in this case, we are generally advising clients to use the other. You may want to consult with a different expert. Of course, you can come and consult with us at Legal Services of Northern Virginia, and I'm going to give you our information at the end of the video. It is a 2-page form, as you can see. It's going to ask you to check one of the boxes and then, of course, to provide your information. Who are you? Where do you live? What's your ITIN number? If someone is helping you, right, there's going to have a portion for that. It's going to request information on which taxable year we're talking about. It could be taxable year 2020. So you would write something like 01/01/2020 through 12/31/2020. Or we could be doing the same for 2021. And you're going to identify the amounts. You are going to know those inappropriate amounts because you looked at the account transcripts. So you're going to write down 180 something, 200 and whatnot, whatever the amount is, you're going to write that there. It is going to ask you, what form are we talking about? For individuals, we generally use the 1040, but this is a form that can be used for other taxpayers. It could be corporate taxpayers. You don't have to worry about that. For you, you just have to find that 1040 spot. And it is going to ask you to provide some form of explanation. So what we are doing for our clients is creating short narratives, something that basically summarizes what I've been telling you about, that the COVID-19 pandemic was a federally declared disaster, the dates during which it was active, that no interest or penalties for failure to file, to pay, should have been assessed or should have accrued, should have accumulated during that time, that there was a deadline that didn't expire until it's not going to expire until July 2023, but that there's that 3-year window, right? Starting from 2023 through 2026. And, just make sure that you include some sort of strong request. I request an abatement. I request a refund. This is a simplified version of what we would do for our clients, but I want you to understand what the process is like. Now, you should know that the IRS has appealed the decision from the courts. It is possible that they will make arguments that convince the court at some point, but it is also possible that they won't. So I don't want you to feel discouraged. I want you to know that you should mail your claim. You should protect your rights using certified mail services before July 10th, 2026. So let's recap. If you overpaid the IRS, too many withholdings, penalties that shouldn't have been assessed, interest, you have to make a claim or you will lose your rights. Your deadline again is July 10, 2026. I know, you might be thinking that there could be an extension of time, but please don't. As I told you, the IRS has already appealed the decision that extended the date until July 10, 2026. So please don't wait. Consult with an expert, an attorney, an accountant to come to us. Our number to request services is 703-778-6800. One of our paralegals will talk to you, confirm that you qualify for our services, and then it's going to refer you to one of us. Our director is Nancy Ryan. I'm Valeshka Watkins, as I told you, and we would be happy to help you if you call and qualify for our services. I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm going to thank you for your time and for listening to this presentation. Have a great day.